So sorry for the delay. There's been a huge hang up with Google Hangouts, but we've got it resolved, hopefully. So please just let us know in the chat that this is working and we can move along. And again, thank you so much for your patience and moving over to this new event. I know it's less than ideal. It's always my prayer that this doesn't happen, but hopefully this is the only time it happens. So anyways, welcome to Lunch and Learn. If you're new to the series, it's a weekly workshop where we get together with creatives and go over behind the scenes of their business, tutorials, screen shares, everything in between. It's a really fun event. Today we have Jenna from Jalen Designery and also Refresh Weekly Planner. And she's going to dive into behind the launch of her sold out planner, her first product. So I'm going to take it over to Jenna to introduce herself.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm so excited to be here. If you guys don't know Jamie, she's a wonderful, wonderful person, and I've had a really great time getting to know her over the last few weeks. And she is our webinar expert and Lunch and Learn expert here. So I'm a really total newbie at this, so bear with me if I tend to ramble, but I know we started a little bit late. Thank you again for hanging in with us. I will try to be like aware of timing and stuff because I know a lot of you are on your lunch break or trying to squeeze this in today. So we're really glad you could join us. So like she said, I'm Jenna with Jalen Designery. I run a little design boutique where I specialize in branding and web design for bloggers and small businesses. But last year I did launch my first product, the Refresh Weekly Planner. If you haven't seen it, I have one right here so you can take a peek. This is the marble cover and they all come with like the gold wire, and it is a weekly layout here. And so I won't go through too many of the product details, but I will be taking you along with me on my journey of how this came a reality from a little tiny idea last spring. So this is what we're talking about today.
Okay, looks like, just so you know, the chat, it's up and running. So everyone says, yay, it's working. So we're glad that it's working. So Jenna, you just kind of want to walk through how you prep for the launch, maybe how you decided what product to do. I know you have loads of information to share.
I do. I have a lot of information, so I'm gonna try and like pick and choose the best pieces of the process that I think you guys would find the most helpful, because I know some of you are probably here because you're interested in the process, and others might actually be launching a product soon. And so congrats to you, that's very exciting. So I'm just gonna kind of walk you through my process, how everything went down, the good and the bad. So I will go ahead and get started. I broke this up into 5 chunks of the process because it's a little easier to follow that way, and there's always a million ways you can do one thing. But to start, obviously, I started with a ton of research. So the Refresh Weekly Planner started as something very different than it was, which I think is true of a lot of ideas that grow into reality. It started as a little baby idea that I had last year, and sort of put it out into the universe, AKA shared it with friends, and word started getting around, and there was a lot of excitement and support for the idea for me to design a planner. And never underestimate the value of support from friends and family, because I really feel like that alone can make something that feels impossible seem totally possible. So that mindset shift, along with my just like natural love of paper and designing and organization, created the perfect storm for me to make this planner my very first product. So I started just by talking about it to a lot of people, just to see if there was a need for it, because I know creative individuals such as ourselves have a lot of ideas all the time, as I'm sure you all do. And maybe necessarily timing or the need for it isn't always there, but just talking about it to others, feeling it out, getting their feedback is always a great place to start. So I literally just started talking it up to everyone. I would create little sketches and try to show them visually what I was thinking. And the more I talked to people, the product became something very different than what I initially planned it was going to be. I guess a lot of people I were talking to had a lot of different ideas of things that I could do to make it better, or maybe something I didn't necessarily need. So that initial feedback was huge for me. And, you know, in an ideal world, it would be great to be able to test your product, right? I didn't have a formal focus group, unfortunately, to help test my product. But what I did was I knew like the weekly layout, and I'm holding that here. The weekly layout was sort of the core of my product. So I think it was just like 1 week in July, I printed out a weekly layout as a starting point and went to Target and bought a little notebook and glued it in there and started using it. And then I did that for about 6 to 8 weeks. I would use it at the end of the week, I would revise it and then use it again. And so in my head, you know, a focus group of one is better than none. So it was a good way for me to test the product myself and see what was working and what wasn't. And it gave me something to show to people as I was telling them about it. Now I had something I could physically at least show them, like, well, here's what I'm thinking. And it was great to hear their feedback on that as well. So if I'm talking too fast, let me know.
You're good. Yeah, okay. You're doing great.
Okay, thank you.
I also wanted to mention, if anyone has questions, please post those below the video and we'll get to those at the end. So this is in kind of an informal hangout, so go ahead and post those. All right, keep going, Jenna.
Thank you so much. So from there, just, you know, the talking to people helped. I also did put out a SurveyMonkey. Really any way in the beginning stages that you can gather feedback and, you know, just gather all the information that you can. There's never too much info and feedback that you can gather in those beginning stages. So make that a priority if you are looking into launching a product. From there, I started getting a more clear idea of what the product was going to look like. So I spent time researching vendors and figuring out materials and processes for how this thing was going to actually come together logistically. For me, it was a priority to look for local vendors first. I love supporting the community. I'm in Kansas City, and everyone here is very pro-local, and I love that attitude. So ideally, I would have loved to use all local vendors. I was able to bring some on board, and then others I just reached out to in other parts of the country, but was excited that it is a fully made in the US product. That was a goal of mine. So researching vendors and figuring out your processes and materials will help you determine your price point. In this stage, I started with my dream situation for a planner, right? It had all the bells and whistles and super fancy and like all the best of everything. And from there started to scale back on anything that maybe wasn't super cost friendly or wasn't going to be the best solution for what I was trying to achieve here. Because I also wanted to be aware of the price point I was trying to get it at. So keeping all of those, I like all those little details in mind when you're figuring out your materials, as well as your packaging materials. So obviously you're going to think of all the materials for your product, but I also spent time researching all my packaging options, looking to see what's out there now and how I want to do it for mine, and incorporating that into the total cost of your product. And you may have heard this before, but a simple formula for figuring out your retail cost is to take the cost of your product times 2 to get your wholesale cost, and then taking that times 2 to get your retail costs. So that's sort of what I followed as a loose guideline. Now, I didn't completely stay on track with that because I knew I was doing a shorter run with my very first launch. So I went a little outside of that, but it is a good guideline to fall back on if you're trying to determine pricing and working everything together to figure out your retail pricing. So this whole time I'm trying to figure out materials and vendors and all the pieces that are going to play into the product. I'm still talking to people about it. I think, you know, after a while you may feel like, oh, I'm bugging people, like they don't want to hear about this anymore. But truly, anyone I talked to about it would get so excited, and they wanted to see behind the scenes shots, and they wanted to see what was happening and how this whole thing was coming together. So I made it a priority to keep sharing with people and taking them along on that journey, because it is exciting. And it's not every day that you are launching a product and going through that whole process. So be sure to keep sharing with people and bringing them along with you on that journey, and building the excitement. And also, just in doing that, it helps hold yourself socially accountable. So if you're like me, it can be easy to kind of get off track and maybe not stay totally on your timeline. And, you know, one day it's an idea, the next day it's like, well, whatever, it never came to fruition anyway. But when you're talking to people about it and giving them dates and getting them excited, then you're holding yourself socially accountable, and it's a great way to help you follow through. And I think that's true of everything, which is why I don't tell people I'm going to work out 5 times a week. I don't think I can hold myself to that yet. I'll get there. Maybe.
You did such a great job promoting it, though. I'm sure a lot of people here have seen it behind the scenes. Like, it's refreshing to know that you didn't really have it all the way finished when you're kind of promoting it online. I think that's so smart too, to build excitement. And even, I think you mentioned before when we were just talking, aside from this hangout, that you did like a mock-up of the planner and just put that out there too. I think that's such a smart idea to get hype around it, build excitement, and also hold yourself responsible for it.
Yeah, because I think people are really visual learners, and they want to see things, right? Like, it's one thing to talk about it, but if you can show them tidbits and like pieces of it. So yes, like that notebook I ran and got at Target, I just pulled it into Photoshop and mocked it up with the cover I knew I was going to use, and, you know, made the wire gold and everything else, just so people could get a solid idea, even though I didn't have product to share yet, what this was going to look like. And I think that helped, like you said, build excitement, because they can see exactly what's coming. And yeah, it's exciting. But,
yeah, that's a smart tip for anyone, not just products, but anything that you do, like launching your blog, your business, anything like that. So taking notes over here. It's nice. I have one question while we're around this topic.
oh yeah.
Natasha asked, how'd you find the right printer? I've struggled finding a printer who will be able to completely custom work and not just set in their set format.
Okay. So I did look at a lot of printers. I think going through vendors was probably the most laborious process for me, because I wanted, you know, it's a long-term relationship that you're building, and you want to make sure you find the right people to work with. So I did talk to a variety of printers. The one I ended up going with, I knew was going to be able to do a beautiful job. We did a couple of test runs with them, and they were going to be able to meet my price point. As far as the customization, I had them print everything, and actually I bind everything myself at home. So that was a decision, again, I had to make. Was I going to hire someone local to manufacture the planners, or do I want to purchase a machine and do this at home in my living room, which is what I ended up doing, just because cost-wise, it makes sense right now. You know, someday I hope to be able to move to a manufacturer and change that whole process, but it makes sense right now. And it was going to give me the ability to do the customization portion of the planner, which was really a huge, you know, factor into the design of the planner. So I chose a printer really based on relationship and gut feeling, and knowing that they were going to meet my needs for the specific project. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. Yeah, I think that's a good answer.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Barbara Corcoran personally. And she always says, like, when you just don't know, trust your gut and, you know, make the decision that feels best for you. And so honestly, a lot of the time that's what it comes down to, because I, you know, just like a lot of people, I feel very new at this process. So a lot of decisions were made on what I thought was going to be the best decision for me and my business. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so smart. And I actually used to be a print designer for 2 years, or like 2.5 years or so. And I can vouch for customer service is everything.
Yes.
So you'll find printers who might be cheaper than what you ended up going with. I'm not sure what your situation was, but it makes all the difference having a rep that's on your team, that's on your side, and will allow you to do the things that you want. So I'm sure that was kind of your gut feeling too, is like, this feels right, you know?
It was finding someone who really gets your vision, because there are definitely printers I would go to and they're like, why do you want to print a planner? Like, everyone's using their phone now. What? So finding a printer that was excited about my vision too was really important. And this printer specifically was, so that was another huge factor.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I think that answers that question.
Perfect. So from here, I just also wrote down what's the buzz about, because creating excitement around the product, I can't stress enough, is so important, because you don't want to hide all your details and then launch and then it falls flat because no one's heard of it, no one understands it, it's confusing. So use the whole time that you're planning to continue building excitement, but also think about partnerships and influencers that might be able to come on board and help you out. For me, I'm a part of an online group of small business owners who are mostly women and creative individuals. And I reached out saying, hey, I'm launching this planner. Here's a shot of a mock-up of what it's going to look like. And I'd love some help promoting this. If there are any bloggers out there who'd love to help me out. And I had a lot of people interested. I think people are always willing and excited to help and like step up and support you. So I spent that evening emailing everyone and coming up with like all kinds of fun ideas to collaborate on their blogs and on Instagram, because I specifically chose Instagram to focus most of my marketing efforts as far as social media goes, just because it is a very beautiful visual platform and I thought it would pair nicely with my product. I think it is important to find a place to really hone in on and focus a lot of your efforts. Not to say, you know, of course I used other platforms, Facebook and Periscope and Twitter to help push things out, but overall, it was a really great strategy for me because I could always direct people to Instagram and start building my audience for the planner over there. And people knew to check there for updates and exclusive content. And it was an exciting place to be. So, but for the partnerships and influencers, if there are people who have the right audience that match what your potential customers might be, that would be something to look into, and just reach out to them, because you never know until you ask if they'll be willing to help out.
That's how we met too, actually.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Which is an awesome Facebook group, and so I saw her post, and a bunch of people commented willing to reply and help her out in some way, and so I connected with her there with Jenna, and then she asked to do maybe a blog post or something. And I said, you know, this is more interactive and fun, and I think it could be a good opportunity to do something different. And anyway, so that's why Jenna's here today. So you never know if you post something like that, where it will take you. I've seen your planner on someone's Periscope before. I've seen it, people post on Instagram. I've seen blog posts about it. So you did a good job at partnering up with some other influencers to get the word out there.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and another like fun story is I was on Periscope one day, just like tuning into someone's broadcast, and connected with another person who was tuning in, and she happened to be planning a store launch in LA in the fall, and we had connected and just talked, and I helped her with some graphic design needs, but then she saw my planner on Instagram, since that's where we were both hanging out a lot, and wanted to carry it in store. And so we started building a relationship that way. So truly, you never know who you're going to meet on social media. It's such a crazy, crazy world. It's a really cool thing, actually. But yeah, so definitely don't be shy and reach out to people that you admire too, and who have the right audience for your product, because those opportunities are just waiting for you to like take advantage of them.
Yeah, that's great advice. I had one question that didn't make it into the questions box, but
Okay.
Shay was asking who your printer was, if they do art prints and mugs and such. I'm not sure if they would do mugs, but I'm sure art prints, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they do art prints. It's a local vendor in Kansas City. I don't know that they do printing on like materials like mugs and more like tangible products like that, but I do know that they do a wide variety of printing for like marketing materials and pretty much anything paper-based, you know, like most printers will. But that would be something to look into. It's always also good to have several vendors on hand for different needs. So for instance, I do have another printer in town that did not print the planner, but they do print other materials for me based on my needs. So just having those different contacts, and that's when like doing all your research ahead of time really comes into play, because even if you don't use this printer for this thing this time, you may use them in the future for something else. So building your arsenal of vendors and contacts for your business needs is always super helpful.
Yeah, that's great. A couple more questions, if you don't mind interjecting in here. Do you mind sharing where you found your binding machine?
Oh, sure. So I started, it's always like a loop, right? Like you start one place, you get past to this place, get past to this place. I started, again, by looking locally. So I went to a local bindery in Kansas City. I've never been to one of those before. I walked in and there are just things bound all over the place. You know, it's like a dream world. But I talked to a lady there who I had connected with through a contact, and she put me in touch with one of her suppliers in Chicago. I gave them a call and talked to a rep at that company. And the name of the company now is slipping my mind, but she ended up directing me to other resources online to look for binding machines and supplies at different rates, because it can, you know, it can be a competitive thing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I found the machine that I wanted on several different websites, but I purchased from Amazon because they were very competitive with pricing, and it was through another binding company though, like the shop that was selling it on Amazon. So, and then my binding materials, I get my supplies also through an online company. There's so many out there. There's like Achilles is like the name of a binding machine company, and then there's Binding 101. There's Lamination Depot. When you start Googling all of these like supplies, you'll just be greeted with all kinds of resources. And honestly, most of these websites I would hop onto and I'd get on their chat function and just start asking a lot of questions, because I was so new to the world of binding, and everyone's really helpful. And there's a lot, when you first get into it, there's a lot of little details as far as like, oh, you want to make sure you get the right kind of wire and the right pitch and the right machine for your needs and all this. So it really came down to a lot of questions and a lot of Googling and a lot of just reaching out to different contacts in that industry.
Yeah, I'm sure it changes with each project too, depending on what you're looking for. So there is no like one answer for what to do.
I'm sorry, that was probably really vague.
No, you're fine. It all comes down to research though for every project, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. But for sure, just so you know, like I definitely have gone in circles, like trying to find the perfect solution for me and what was going to make the most sense. And there are a million right answers. So you may find a different solution that works for you, and it could be totally different than what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we'll take a pause on the questions, come back to those at the end so you can continue kind of walking us through the process.
Okay, yeah. So the next thing I wanted to touch on is taking pre-orders, because this was a huge benefit for me and a really good experience. If you have a product that it makes sense to do so, I would highly recommend planning a pre-order period. I found that like a 2 to 4 week period works really well, because it allows you time to make any final tweaks that you need to do. But it's also like when you start, I'm sure obviously you can go beyond 4 weeks, but when you start going beyond that, you don't want customers to forget about you, and you don't want to drag it out too long, because you want it to stay top of mind and continue that momentum. So for me, it was a matter of working back from when I knew I wanted to sell the product. For my ideal situation, I wanted to start selling the first week of November, because I do have a time-sensitive product, being a 2016 planner. And I worked back from that and said, okay, I'm going to start pre-orders in September. And then I was like, okay, it's going to be late September. Okay. And then by the end of it, it was like the last couple days of September. Like I started, but I still made it in September. So it was fine. Because again, I was holding myself socially accountable. I kept telling people September. So I started my pre-orders like the last couple days of September, and they ran through October. And then I started shipping out the first week in November like I had planned. But honestly, and the funny thing is, like, during that whole pre-order period, I did not even have the product finalized and in my hands until like days before I was shipping out, which is kind of scary, but also kind of gets that adrenaline going because it's, you know, it's part of the challenge and excitement of running a product-based business, I think, is you're going to run into hiccups and challenges along the way. And during the month of October, there were still things that were like tweaking and some things that came up that I had to find a solution for. And my poor fiance here like knows all about like the trials that we went through that month, just trying to perfect everything and get it ready in time for shipping. So don't be discouraged by things that come up and plan for that time to happen, because if everything goes smooth sailing for you, that is awesome and congratulations. But if it doesn't, like, that's totally normal, and just know that you may have to plan around some things, but that's okay, because also people are very understanding, especially with products that they are pre-ordering and it's the first in your line or something brand new. Customers are usually very understanding about small delays or anything that might come up. Granted, if there is anything big that comes up, like you can only offer 2 colors instead of 3, or you're going to be delayed by like 3 weeks for shipping, absolutely be transparent about stuff like that, because like I said, customers are really understanding, and 9 times out of 10, or like 99% of the time, there will not be any backlash for those kind of changes, because they get it. And you want to make your product as perfect and like ready as possible. So yeah, so don't stress about things that may come up along the way, for sure.
Yeah, I had a question about your pre-orders, if you don't mind sharing. Did you have mostly people bought in your pre-order phase, or did they wait until it launched and that's when people bought more? Did you have kind of a breakdown there?
So it was interesting actually how it played out. Because I had been talking to so many friends and family beforehand, I would say probably 80% of my sales during that pre-order phase were people that I knew in one way or another. And then I shipped out that whole batch that first week of November. And about a week later, you know, people started posting about it and like sharing the excitement because they were receiving their planners in the mail, and spreading awareness that way. And then I had this huge rush of strangers that were ordering, of people I didn't know. So I think, you know, if I had done an even better job of getting exposure before, like during that pre-order period, there may have been more people that I didn't know ordering. But it definitely took, I think, that first push to start building momentum and start spreading the word, to start bringing in orders. So I would say probably 30% of my sales were probably during that pre-order period, and then the remaining like 70% followed up in the 3 weeks after the product officially launched in November.
Okay, you probably were more active on Instagram, I would think, too, as far as posting the packaging and all that too. So
yeah, it's like the more you have to show, the more you're going to post too, just like you said. So as soon as I had like actual product to show people, I was a lot more excited to be posting about it, and the word spread a lot more quickly. So yeah, but the pre-order period was great because it gave me an idea of what the final number was that I was going to order for this initial run. I knew I wanted it to be a short run, and I wanted it to be like a limited exclusive kind of thing. But I did end up raising my initial order by like 50%, just based off of the pre-orders and how that was going. And so I was glad I did that, because they did sell out pretty quickly, and I probably should have ordered more, but now I know for next time, right? It's all a learning experience.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, you can keep kind of walking us through the process.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, guys, if this is going a little long. I think we're almost there. So, the other thing that I was going to mention with the whole pre-order phase is when you are showing people, especially if you don't have product, this can be tricky, but do your best to keep the info very clear and easy to understand, because the last thing you want to do is confuse potential customers and they don't purchase from you because they don't get it. And that was actually a struggle for me, because a planner in itself is pretty obvious. Most people were like, oh yeah, like a planner, like I used in middle school. I'm like, okay, yeah, kind of. But, but my planner had the customization portion to it at the end with where you could choose 2 custom add-ons, but you get 4 options. So that was something kind of new and different. And it took me forever, I feel like, to finalize my messaging and like perfect that so that people understood it. Ultimately, I ended up creating some diagrams, and I would post like, okay, so literally here are the 4 you can choose from, and you get to pick 2. Yay. And there's your planner. I tried to make it as simple and clear as possible. It was still probably confusing for some people, but then once others started to order and help spread the word, I think that helped as well. But no matter what your product is, just make sure it's very clear to your customers so there's no confusion as to what you're selling, because you want to get them excited about something, and that's hard to do if they're going to be confused about what the product is. So yeah, that was my final note on the pre-order period. But from there, so once you have everything together and you have your launch date set, which for me was the first week of November, and gosh darn it, it was like Friday when I think I finally shipped everything out, but it was still the first week of November, so it was fine. But once you hit the ground running, it's important to just like not just like ship and then fall flat. Like keep the momentum going and keep it exciting, because even though you've been married to this product for the last 6 months or so, you know what, like all those customers are first now seeing your product in person for the first time. So for them, it is really exciting, and it's all brand new. So now is the time, more than any other time, to really keep that momentum going and keep getting people excited about your product. For me, I really wanted to think about all the customer touch points, and I think that's true of like no matter what your product is. Think about like your packaging and your shipping and your notifications to them for shipping, just any little touch point that you can do to make the customer experience a really, really great one. I tried to make the presentation of the box and the shipping and everything a really fun thing. So when you open it, you're greeted with like gold confetti, and there's like peach tissue paper, and it's all on brand and pretty. And a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, I felt like it was my birthday. Like I opened it and it was like a surprise. And they weren't expecting that. So I think those little details and elements of surprise that you can include outside of just your product are things that will make it memorable and exciting for the customer along the way. And 2, so for me, I wanted it to be a very shareable thing, because I designed it to be a pretty product that could be styled and photographed, along with use as a planner, of course. But I wanted it to be very shareable. So I was paying close attention to the details, and I included a card. It's kind of like a little welcome card. It said something like, congratulations on your refresh planner. And then I said at the bottom, like, are you on social? Then you should share it. Here's the hashtag, tag me. And a lot of people did that. You know, I didn't know if there would be a lot of reaction to sharing it on social, because to me that feels like a common like share, a common call to action. But there were a lot of people who shared their unboxing, and they like styled it, and they shared it with all the pieces that came in the box and how fun it was. And that was probably the most special part of the whole process to me, seeing people have it in real life and getting excited about it and sharing it with their friends and family. And so naturally, I pulled all those photos together and made a collage, and I was just like overwhelmed with the support at that point. But yeah, just simply asking people to share and asking them to get on board and help you out. That's all you have to do, you know, 99% of the time, and people are there to help you and make it a great experience for you too.
It's a good ask too, because they're already excited, right? They just got the planner, there's the confetti, right. They're all excited by how they're going to use it and ready to set goals and get organized and stuff. And so if you've just given them something that they're really excited about and you have one small ask to share it, like they're definitely more willing to share since they just received something. So I think that's really smart to do that.
Yeah, it all comes down to making it easy for your customers, like the whole way, from communicating your product to your messaging to your call to actions, like after they receive your product. Just make the whole experience easy and fun for them, because I think that's like the magical part of retail, right? Like I'm very passionate about business and small businesses and the operational side of it, but I get really excited when stores and companies and brands like go the extra mile to make it a really awesome experience for the customer. And so that's what I tried to do and translate in my own products.
Yeah, you did a good job too. Okay, did you have anything else to kind of wrap up? I know you had some notes on hitting the ground running.
No, I did. I think I covered just about everything that I wanted to with the process for me. Obviously, that was a very like high level overview of everything. So if you guys do have questions, let me know. I feel like I rushed it too. So I hope you all found this valuable and like took away some insight for your own product launch or whatever you might be planning. Good things for 2016.
Yeah, I think it was definitely insightful for me to just talk to you and just some bullet points to hear about, like as far as pre-orders and how those are important, building hype for the launch, and then brand touch points at the end. Like that just totally makes sense. I feel like those are kind of the three overarching, maybe I'm wrong, but points that people can take away from today.
Absolutely. Yep, that's spot on.
Okay, we have a couple questions.
Okay.
I'm going to get to. Where did you look for packaging? How did you hear about Goodwins? That's from Samantha.
Okay, so packaging, I get really excited by fun packaging, so that was the fun part of the process for me. I just honestly started by looking to see what's out there. So I kind of split this into two categories. I looked for packaging for the product itself, and then I researched packaging as far as the shipping packaging goes. So for the product itself, I started by literally going to stores and looking at other journals, notebooks, books, something similar, just to see how they had things prepared and packaged. I did look online. Pinterest is always a great resource for looking for that kind of like creative inspiration as well. And I started making notes and like sketching out ideas for everything that I wanted to do for my packaging. And then again, like scaled back where I had to, chose the most cost efficient options that I thought were gonna still make a bang. And then for the shipping packaging, I went back and forth a lot on the shipping packaging because I wanted it to be a very like fun experience. And I actually used Apple as a lot of inspiration for this because I think they do a beautiful job with their packaging, and they just like everything feels so luxurious, right? Like even those boxes, the way they like slow slide off the top. And obviously I wasn't gonna have like Apple quality packaging quite yet, but I did love the idea of doing like a plain white box that you like open and reveal and it's just like a party inside, right? So that was the idea behind my shipping packaging. But I did a lot of research online and then in stores and got on some websites that do offer packaging supplies and looked through all of my options. A lot of those websites will also send you samples if you're just wanting like a sample of a box or a sample of, you know, whatever, just to try it out and see how it would work. So I ordered a bunch of samples and put together my final like packaging, what I had decided on, and took it to the post office and like made sure I was gonna be okay with like shipping costs and everything was gonna align correctly and all my pieces were in play. And then I just went through and made sure I like ordered enough of everything and had our living room became a warehouse. I had everything lined up just perfectly and got it all ready for the assembly stage of putting the planners together.
Yeah, thanks for answering that. I had one good question from Michaela. She says, what will you do differently with the next product you create and launch? What was the biggest hiccup in the process and what did you learn? That's a lot, but kind of like what would you do differently if you could?
Okay, let's see. So I think like the whole exposure piece of it and the building awareness, that's why like I stress, you know, the buzz and the excitement portion of it a lot, because you can't talk about your product too much in those beginning stages when you're first trying to spread the word. I think if I could go back, I would spend more time and effort just getting it out there in front of people and building those retail relationships earlier, because I did get kind of a late start in the game for that as well, especially with the holiday season. You know, not having product available until November. A lot of retail stores carry product like way earlier than that for the holiday season. So there are some things I would have started earlier, and just overall, like, maybe had a better strategy in play for creating buzz and exposure in those beginning stages. But also, what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
What was the biggest hiccup in the process? What did you learn?
Oh, the biggest hiccup. Let's see.
I think I know what it was when you were talking to me earlier.
I can't remember what I said.
You said the printer quoted a certain price.
Yes.
And then,
okay, I thought, yeah.
Is that the biggest hiccup? It seems
I would say that's the biggest hiccup. So with my printer, we had built this really great relationship, and I, you know, obviously trusted them, and they were like, they've been nothing but great with working with me. But somewhere along the way, something had got misquoted, and I released, so I started pre-orders on the last Monday of September at like midnight, though. I started at midnight and people started ordering, and it was exciting. And then the printer came back later that same day and said, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, we misquoted you. It's actually going to be like this much instead of this much for everything. And I was like, no, like I just put out my pricing. I can't go back now. So that was a hiccup, because I did go back to the printer, and I was stressing it for about 24 hours because I was like, okay, I'm going to be paying people to take my planners off of my hands. But no, it ended up being fine. She went back and revised a few things, and there was another mistake on their part on that new quote. So long story short, like, we got everything worked out and it ended up being fine. But for like 24 hours, I was freaking out a little bit. And, you know, and those things happen, and all you can do in that situation is try to work it out, right? Like, you can't backpedal at this point. I mean, you can. I guess I could have pulled product, but I didn't want to do that because it was out there and I was excited. But all you can do is like work to find a solution at that point and like keep a cool head. And I probably didn't do a very good job of that at the time. Again, my poor fiance always gets the brunt of like when I have little freakouts about things. But yeah, so those things are going to happen. But you always end up finding a solution. Just, you know, be creative, look at all of your options, and just know that people are going to be understanding in the process as well.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really helpful to hear. It doesn't all go perfectly planned, as proven by this late start to this workshop.
It doesn't, yeah.
Things happen.
Sometimes you order the wrong bubble wrap and you have to run to Staples at like 11 p.m. and get, you know, things are going to come up, but that's fine.
Okay, Sierra has a question on how long did it take you to develop your product, like from the moment you got the idea to when you launched it?
Let's see. I think it was a baby idea that I officially said out loud in like May, and then spent the summer preparing and doing the whole research portion, talking about it, testing product. And then I spent pretty much the month of September and the first part of October finalizing the design, right? So the design portion maybe took about 6 weeks, like back and forth and going back and forth with the printer and doing mock-ups, et cetera. And then the official product was done and out the door by the first week of November. So from, you know, May to early October, it was like idea to designing and then printing, and then it was out the door. It was definitely a step-by-step process, though. I knew it was going to be an investment with my time, but also like a huge financial investment. So I wanted to be, you know, very careful about making sure I had everything in order and just being very strategic about the process, which, yeah, I think is important for anything, but especially when you're launching a product, there's a lot more to consider from a financial standpoint and having all that inventory. And so, yeah, it was, I guess, you know, 5 months or so from start to finish.
During that time, were you still taking on client work and doing other things as well?
I was, and that was tricky because obviously I wanted to spend all my time on the planner. But during that time, it was more or less how I rewarded myself, excuse me. So I did have a lot of client work at the time, and then I would say like, okay, if I make it through the day, I got to spend 2 hours working on the planner tonight. And that's how it was for a couple of months, like during the design portion and just figuring out all the nitty gritty details. But yeah. It was a lot to balance there for a while.
Yeah, it is a lot. Okay, Christy has a question on, did you use your personal Instagram to promote or launch the Instagram or launch the planner, or did you start one and get new followers from there?
I use my personal. So at the time, my Instagram was Jaylyn Stratman, which is my name. But I think it was like right before the product launched or like during that pre-order period, I switched all of my accounts over to Jaylyn Designery just for consistency. But I always kept it on my personal / brand. My account is very much more geared toward my business than my personal life, aside from my guinea pigs. Do you guys follow me? I'm sorry. There are like all kinds of guinea pigs.
They're adorable.
But I keep it mostly geared toward the business. I think me personally, I use like my Facebook more for personal stuff. And then Twitter is kind of a mix as well. But my Instagram is definitely geared more toward the business side of things. So I always have had just one account though. I don't know if I could manage 2 accounts. I think one is enough for me personally. I don't know how people do more than one, but you must be super people.
I think that's smart too, because I don't know what your plans are as far as the planners go, but I could see you launching like other products similar to it, and you already have launched a different type of planner. And so keeping it under one name rather than say Refresh Weekly Planner as the handle, that would make you have to create a new handle for each product. So having it under one name just makes sense for your sanity, especially, but also just for brand recognition, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just easier to drive everyone to one account like consistently. And again, it comes down to like not confusing your customers and making it simple and easy for them to attain the information and learn about you and your products. So for me, it was a good solution for sure.
Yeah. Okay, we have just a couple more questions. When you sell wholesale, do you work out agreements with the stores and vendors? I plan on selling my jewelry wholesale, and I'm interested in the agreement part of that. And that's from Sierra.
Yes. So I do mine on a case-by-case basis. I do have a set, like this is generally what I do for wholesale. And then I also have a relationship with one on commission as well. I think it depends on your product and what makes the most sense for you. And I've had a couple like different stores ask about different scenarios too. So again, yeah, it's a very case-by-case basis, but pretty much I set from the beginning, like with my pricing, what I knew I would be able to do for wholesale. So that's what I always go back to. And then for commission, I have a different price that's a little more than buying online, just to because then I do like with most situations, I do like a 50-50 agreement on commission when I sell in stores. So it's very case by case. I'm sorry, that was a really vague answer, but I really just like to meet with the store and figure out what's going to work best for them. And some stores say, you know, they only will do it wholesale or they'll only do it commission. So I try to meet their needs as long as it makes sense from a financial perspective. And make sure I'm not going to be like losing out on profit or anything in the process.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it would probably be beneficial just to talk directly to that person that you're thinking about wholesaling with. And they probably have more experience than you do as far as starting your first launched product on how wholesaling works. You can do as much research as you want, but I would think talking directly to that person and saying, you know, what's an agreement we could work out together? What's kind of standard?
That's very true. The very first place I did wholesale at, I asked her so many questions and she's like, no, it's fine. Like, ask me, like, I don't care. So again, people are really willing to help you out if you just ask and put yourself out there for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think the only other 2 questions we have are things that maybe you could send afterwards if you wanted to, or point them to your Instagram. One person said, I'd love to see your mock-up that you created.
I have one of them here, but
You do?
I have a series. Yeah, I have a series of mock-ups, but I'll just show you guys. So this is one. And so this was with the stripe cover. You can see it has black wire and not the right tabs. Like the tabs aren't like rounded and nice and everything. And then the paper is different. So, oh, my thing's falling out of it. Yeah, and I would just go through here and like make Post-it notes of things that I wanted to change and update, and then I'd go back to the printer. I think we did a series of maybe 3 mock-ups overall before we got to like the final one that was like, yes, this is perfect. So yeah, I definitely, my very, very first one was super rough. Again, it was that notebook from Target that I would just paste my planner sheets in, but sometimes you have to be scrappy and just make it work with what you have, right?
Yeah. So is that one that was from the printer then?
Yeah, this one I just showed you is from the printer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very early stages.
And then the last question was from Samantha, and she's just curious what the name of that Chicago company was that you couldn't think of. So if you could send that afterwards, or
I'll find it. I know I have it. Yeah, I have it in my email, so I will definitely find it for you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have. I think we're just shy. I mean, just a little over time. So you did really good.
Sorry, guys.
Condensing it. I really appreciate everything that you shared today. It's awesome. Just inspiration to see how you've launched your first product, how it's sold out so quickly. That's just so inspiring. And I can't wait to see what else you create relating to the Refresh Weekly Planner.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate the support. And just like on some final words, again, I know I love Barbara Corcoran, but she always says, like, start before you're ready. So if you have an idea, just start talking to people about it. Don't be afraid to put it out there into the world, because people are always willing to step up and support you. And I will be right there supporting you too. So good luck with all of your adventures in 2016.
Thank you, Jenna. Thanks so much for joining Lunch and Learn this week.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.